Imagine walking away from a life of luxury, castles, and royal titles, forever. That's exactly what Prince Harry did. In 2020, the world was stunned when he and his wife, Meghan Markle, made a historic announcement. They were stepping down as senior members of the British royal family. It was a decision that shocked the monarchy, the media, and millions of people around the world. Why would a prince, born into one of the most powerful and respected families on earth, give up his royal duties? Was it for love? Freedom? A desire to live a normal life? Or was there something more, something personal that the world could not see? Prince Harry's story is not just about leaving a royal title behind. It is about courage, identity, and the search for meaning. It is a story of a boy who lost his mother too young, a young man who fought in war, and a husband and father who chose to protect his family at all costs. And today, you'll hear his incredible journey, from palaces to press headlines, from duty to independence. While you listen, you will also improve your English with simple words, clear structure, and real-life storytelling. So sit back, relax, and let's begin the story of Prince Harry. And tell us in the comments, where are you listening from today? Prince Harry was born on September 15, 1984, at St. Mary's Hospital in London, just like his older brother, Prince William. The world had been eagerly awaiting his arrival, and when he was finally introduced to the public, he was a symbol of joy for the royal family. From birth, he was given a title, Prince Henry Charles Albert David of Wales, but everyone would come to know him simply as Harry. Unlike his brother, who was second in line to the throne, Harry was often referred to as the Spare, a term used for royals who are not direct heirs. While this title seemed insignificant at the time, it would later play a major role in his life. His childhood was a mix of royal tradition and his mother's desire to raise him as a normal boy. Princess Diana, often called the People's Princess, wanted her sons to experience the real world beyond palace walls. She made sure that Harry and William saw life outside of privilege. She took them to amusement parks, let them eat at McDonald's, and encouraged them to meet ordinary people. Harry, with his natural curiosity, loved these experiences. He was fascinated by the world beyond the royal gates, asking endless questions about how people lived outside the palace. But life as a royal came with expectations. Harry was constantly in the spotlight, with cameras following him wherever he went. Even as a toddler, he was photographed at every public event, and the media was obsessed with capturing every detail of his life. His playful and mischievous personality made him a favorite among royal watchers. He was known for sticking out his tongue at photographers, running away from his royal guards, and making funny faces during formal events. His lively spirit often brought laughter, but it also made headlines. Despite the privileges of being a prince, Harry's childhood was not always easy. The rigid rules of royalty meant that he had to follow strict protocols, even as a child. There were expectations about how he should dress, how he should behave, and even how he should speak in public. His every move was analyzed, and while William was being trained for his future as king, Harry often felt like he had no clear role. This lack of purpose would follow him into adulthood, shaping many of the decisions he would later make. One of the strongest influences in Harry's early life was his mother. Diana was his source of warmth, affection, and unconditional love. Unlike previous royals who maintained a certain distance from their children, Diana was deeply involved in Harry's life. She would hug him in public, hold his hand, and whisper words of encouragement when he felt overwhelmed. She made sure he knew that, even though the world expected perfection from him, he was loved just as he was. Harry adored her in return. The bond between Harry and William was also incredibly strong. They were more than just brothers, they were best friends. Growing up in the grand halls of Kensington Palace, they were each other's greatest allies. They played pranks on their nannies, sneaked into the royal kitchens for snacks, and created their own secret codes. Diana encouraged their close relationship, often telling them that no matter what happened, they should always protect and support each other. As he grew older, Harry developed a deep love for sports, especially rugby, polo, and skiing. He found freedom in physical activity, a break from the strict formalities of royal life. Unlike his royal duties, which required perfect posture and polite conversations, sports allowed him to be wild, loud, and competitive. He was naturally talented and fearless on the field, often playing rougher than expected for a prince. But this toughness would serve him well in the future, preparing him for a path no one expected, the military. Harry also developed a fascination with the army at a young age. He loved dressing up in soldier uniforms, playing with toy tanks, and pretending to be on secret missions. His father, Prince Charles, would read him stories of great British soldiers, and Harry would listen with excitement, imagining himself as one of them. He didn't know it then, but this childhood passion would later define much of his identity. Despite the fun and adventure, there was always a shadow looming over his childhood, the pressure of being a royal. As much as Diana tried to give her sons a normal life, the reality was that Harry's every move was documented, analyzed, and criticized. He was just a boy, but the world already had expectations for him. He had to be charming but disciplined, adventurous but respectful, free-spirited but responsible. It was a balancing act that even the most mature adults would struggle with. Just as Harry was beginning to understand his unique place in the royal family, his world was about to change forever. The joyful and carefree days of childhood were about to be shattered by a tragedy that would alter the course of his life. The warmth and security of childhood were suddenly ripped away from Harry's life in the summer of 1997. On August 31st, the world woke up to shocking news. Princess Diana had died in a tragic car accident in Paris. The tunnel where the accident occurred became a place of global mourning, as millions struggled to process the loss of the woman who had been the heart of the royal family. But no one was more devastated than her two young sons. Harry was only 12 years old, too young to fully understand the weight of what had happened, yet old enough to feel the unbearable pain of losing the person he loved most. The days that followed were filled with confusion, sadness, and an overwhelming sense of emptiness. Harry and William were at Balmoral Castle in Scotland when the news reached them. Their father, Prince Charles, had the painful duty of waking his sons and delivering the news that would change their lives forever. The royal family, known for their tradition of emotional restraint, kept the boys away from the public for several days, hoping to shield them from the overwhelming grief pouring in from all corners of the world. But nothing could truly prepare them for what came next. When the family finally returned to London, the sight that awaited them was beyond anything Harry could have imagined. Outside Kensington Palace, thousands of people had gathered to pay their respects. The gates were covered in flowers, letters, candles, and tributes. Strangers sobbed, holding each other, as if they had lost a member of their own family. Diana had touched the world, and now the world was mourning with a level of emotion never seen before for a royal. Yet, in the middle of this grief, Harry felt numb. He later described the experience as surreal, as if he were watching everything from a distance, unable to fully process what had happened. Then came the funeral. The image of Prince Harry, just a boy in a black suit, walking behind his mother's coffin became one of the most unforgettable moments in modern history. Alongside him were Prince William, Prince Charles, Diana's brother Earl Spencer, and Prince Philip. As millions of people around the world watched, Harry kept his head down, his face emotionless. But inside, he was drowning in sorrow. Years later, he would admit that this moment was one of the hardest things he had ever done. No 12-year-old should have to walk behind his mother's coffin while the entire world watches, he later said. After the funeral, life was supposed to go on. But for Harry, nothing was the same. Without Diana, the warmth in his life seemed to disappear. The person who had hugged him, whispered words of encouragement, and protected him from the harsh realities of royal life was gone. He and William were left under the care of their father, Prince Charles, who loved his sons but struggled to express it in the same way Diana had. Charles was a man of duty, raised under the strict expectations of the monarchy, and he believed that moving forward meant maintaining composure. So, Harry was expected to return to school, follow royal protocols, and behave as if everything were normal. But deep inside, nothing felt normal anymore. Harry became withdrawn, struggling to express his emotions. He tried to suppress his grief, pushing it down so he wouldn't have to feel it. He didn't cry, not because he didn't want to, but because he physically couldn't. He later admitted that he felt like he had to be strong, to live up to the expectations of being a prince. But bottling up his emotions only made things worse. The playful, mischievous boy was still there, but now his pranks and jokes became a way to hide the pain no one could see. As he entered his teenage years, that suppressed grief turned into something darker, anger and rebellion. At school, he was easily frustrated and often found himself in trouble. He began pushing boundaries, testing limits, and breaking the strict rules of royal life. Sneaking out of the palace to go to parties, experimenting with alcohol, and making reckless decisions became his way of coping. The media, always eager for a royal scandal, followed his every misstep. Photos of him smoking, drinking, and even wearing an offensive costume at a party spread across newspapers worldwide. Suddenly, the charming spare was labeled the Wild Prince, and the public was divided. Some found his rebellious nature entertaining, calling him the fun prince, while others criticized him for dishonoring the royal family. But behind the headlines, behind the wild parties and reckless behavior, was a young man who was deeply lost. Unlike William, who had a clear path as the future king, Harry had no defined role. He wasn't the heir, and he wasn't quite sure where he fit in. His mother had always told him that he could be anything he wanted to be, but without her guidance, he felt directionless. He longed for something that would give his life meaning, something that would make him feel like more than just a prince in the shadows. It was during this time that Harry made a decision that would change his life. He needed discipline, purpose, and a chance to prove himself, not as a royal, but as an individual. He wanted to step away from the expectations placed upon him and find his own identity. He found that opportunity in the one place where his title wouldn't matter, the military. The decision to join the military was not one Harry made lightly. For years, he had struggled with the expectations placed upon him as a royal, feeling like he had no clear purpose. The military offered him something he had never truly experienced: equality. In the army, there would be no royal titles, no special treatment. He would be judged by his skills, his discipline, and his ability to serve alongside his fellow soldiers. It was exactly what he needed. In 2005, at the age of 20, Harry entered the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst, one of the most prestigious training institutions in the United Kingdom. The rigorous program was designed to push recruits to their limits, testing their physical endurance and mental strength. For the first time in his life, Harry wasn't treated as a prince, he was simply Officer Cadet Wales. No one bowed to him, no one gave him special privileges, and no one cared about his royal status. It was a humbling experience, but it was also liberating. For once, he felt like he was part of something bigger than himself. Military training was grueling. Early morning drills, intense physical exercises, and strict discipline became part of his daily routine. He was expected to carry his own weight, just like every other soldier. He learned to endure long marches with heavy gear, sleep in harsh conditions, and push past exhaustion. But Harry thrived in this environment. He found comfort in the structure, in the sense of purpose that had been missing from his life. The camaraderie he built with his fellow soldiers became one of the most meaningful aspects of his military career. These were men and women who had come from all walks of life, and for the first time, Harry felt truly connected to people outside the royal bubble. After completing his training, he earned the rank of second lieutenant in the British Army and joined the Blues and Royals, a cavalry regiment known for its excellence. But Harry wanted more. He didn't want to simply wear the uniform, he wanted to serve in combat. It was a controversial desire. His family and military officials worried that sending a high-profile royal into active duty would put not only him but his entire unit at risk. But Harry was determined. He refused to sit on the sidelines while others went to war. In 2007, his wish was granted. He was deployed to Afghanistan as part of a covert operation. For 10 weeks, he served as a forward air controller, coordinating airstrikes and supporting ground troops. The experience was life-changing. He wasn't treated like a prince, he was simply another soldier doing his duty. He ate the same food, slept in the same tents, and faced the same dangers as his comrades. For the first time, he felt like he was truly contributing, that he was more than just a member of the royal family. But his time in Afghanistan was cut short when the media leaked his location. Suddenly, he became a target. The risk was too great, and he was pulled from the front lines. Harry was devastated. He had finally found a place where he belonged, a role that gave him purpose, and just like that, it was taken away from him. Determined to continue serving, he trained as an Apache helicopter pilot, a role that allowed him to return to combat zones without the same level of risk to those around him. In 2012, he was deployed to Afghanistan once again, this time as a co-pilot gunner. Flying over the desert, scanning the ground for threats, and engaging enemy positions, Harry was no longer just a soldier, he was a warrior. He had earned the respect of his fellow servicemen, proving that he was willing to put his life on the line just like everyone else. His 10-year military career shaped him in ways he could never have imagined. It gave him discipline, a sense of responsibility, and most importantly, a deep understanding of the struggles that soldiers face, both on the battlefield and after returning home. When he finally left the army in 2015, he knew his mission wasn't over. He had seen firsthand the physical and mental scars left by war, and he was determined to do something about it. Leaving the army had left Harry without the structure and purpose he had once found in military life. Though he remained deeply committed to his charity work, there was still a sense of restlessness within him. He had spent years searching for meaning, for something that would make him feel like more than just the spare prince. What he didn't know was that the person who would change everything was about to walk into his life. In the summer of 2016, Harry was in London when a mutual friend introduced him to Meghan Markle. At the time, Meghan was an actress starring in the hit television series Suits. She was independent, outspoken, and had built her own success without the privileges of royalty. She had also worked as a humanitarian, advocating for gender equality and global development. She was unlike anyone Harry had ever met. Their first conversation lasted for hours, and by the end of the night, Harry was already captivated. Meghan was confident, kind, and unapologetically herself. There was no sense of formality between them, no fear of titles or expectations. She spoke to him as just Harry, not as a prince. Their relationship progressed quickly, though they kept it private for several months. Meghan was still filming in Toronto, and Harry was in the UK, so they spent much of their time apart, relying on late-night calls and secret visits. But from the beginning, Harry knew she was the one. He later admitted that he had never experienced love like this before. Meghan made him feel safe, understood, and truly seen for the first time in his life. When their relationship became public, everything changed. The media frenzy that followed was relentless. Meghan, a biracial American divorcee, was not the typical royal bride, and the British press made that clear. Tabloids scrutinized her every move, twisted her words, and published racially charged headlines. Online trolls filled comment sections with hate, and photographers followed her every step. For Harry, it was unbearable. The same toxic media that had tormented his mother was now coming after the woman he loved. He couldn't stand by and watch history repeat itself. For the first time, he took a public stand against the press, releasing a rare statement condemning their treatment of Meghan. He called out the racial undertones in their coverage and demanded privacy for their relationship. It was a bold move. Royals were traditionally expected to stay silent in the face of media scrutiny. But Harry refused to follow the old rules. He would not let Meghan suffer the same fate as his mother. Despite the challenges, their love only grew stronger. In November 2017, Harry proposed to Meghan during a quiet night at home while they were roasting a chicken, an ordinary moment that perfectly reflected their relationship. Meghan said yes, and soon after, their engagement was announced. While many celebrated the news, others saw Meghan as an outsider, someone who didn't belong in the monarchy. Their wedding, held on May 19, 2018, at Windsor Castle, was one of the most watched events in modern history. It was a royal wedding unlike any other. Meghan's heritage was woven into the ceremony. A gospel choir sang "Stand By Me," and the event featured the first ever black bishop to speak at a royal wedding. The guest list reflected their modern approach to royalty, with Hollywood stars, humanitarian leaders, and activists sitting alongside members of the British aristocracy. For one day, it seemed as though the world had embraced their love story. But behind the scenes, things were far from perfect. The months after their wedding were some of the most challenging of Meghan's life. As she tried to adjust to royal expectations, the media continued their relentless attacks. No matter what she did, she was criticized. If she followed royal protocol, she was seen as trying too hard. If she deviated from tradition, she was accused of disrespecting the monarchy. Stories were fabricated, twisted, and repeated until they became the perceived truth. Meghan later revealed that she had struggled with depression during this time, feeling isolated and hopeless. Harry was devastated. He had promised to protect Meghan, but now he was watching her suffer under the same pressures that had once haunted his mother. The breaking point came in early 2020 when they made a shocking announcement. They were stepping down as senior members of the royal family. It was an unprecedented move, one that sent shockwaves through the monarchy. No modern royal had ever voluntarily walked away from their position. The media called it Megxit, framing it as Meghan's decision, as if Harry had been manipulated into leaving. But in reality, this was his choice as much as hers. He knew they couldn't survive under the current circumstances. He had already lost his mother to the pressure of royal life. He wasn't about to lose his wife as well. Their departure marked the beginning of a new life, one full of uncertainty but also freedom. They moved to North America, first to Canada and later to California, where they hoped to finally escape the relentless scrutiny of the British press. But leaving the monarchy didn't mean leaving the public eye. If anything, the attention on them only grew stronger. Life in California was a world away from the rigid traditions of the monarchy. There were no grand palaces, no formal dinners, no staff attending to every detail of their lives. Instead, Harry and Meghan found themselves adjusting to a life that was, for the first time, entirely their own. Their days were no longer dictated by royal schedules, and they were free to wake up without the weight of expectations on their shoulders. But independence came with challenges. They had chosen to leave the royal family's financial support behind, which meant that for the first time in Harry's life, he had to earn his own living. Determined to use their platform for good, they launched Archewell, a non-profit organization focused on humanitarian efforts, mental health advocacy, and storytelling. Through Archewell, they planned to continue the work they had started as royals, but now on their own terms. They also signed deals with Netflix and Spotify, securing financial independence while creating content that aligned with their values. It was a bold move. No royal had ever transitioned into the media world in such a way. Some saw it as a betrayal of the royal institution, while others viewed it as a necessary step in redefining their public roles. But despite their efforts to move forward, the past continued to follow them. The media scrutiny did not disappear when they left the UK. If anything, it intensified. Every move they made, every statement they gave, was dissected and criticized. The British tabloids accused them of hypocrisy, claiming they wanted privacy while simultaneously signing multi-million-dollar deals. But for Harry and Meghan, this wasn't about hiding from the public. It was about reclaiming control over their own narrative, something neither of them had ever been allowed to do before. Then came the interview that changed everything. In March 2021, Harry and Meghan sat down with Oprah Winfrey for a teleconversation that would send shockwaves through the world. For the first time, they spoke openly about their struggles within the royal family. Meghan revealed that during her time as a working royal, she had experienced such deep depression that she considered taking her own life. She described how she had reached out for help within the institution, only to be told that nothing could be done because it would damage the monarchy's image. The most shocking revelation, however, came from Harry. He admitted that members of his family had expressed concerns about how dark their unborn child's skin might be. The statement sent the media into a frenzy, with many questioning the deep-seated racial biases within the monarchy. The palace released a brief response, saying that the matter would be handled privately, but the damage was already done. The interview divided public opinion. Supporters praised Harry and Meghan for their bravery in speaking out, arguing that they had shed light on the darker realities of royal life. Critics, however, accused them of airing private family matters for personal gain. Some believed that by exposing these issues, they had weakened the monarchy. But for Harry, this wasn't about attacking his family, it was about finally telling the truth. Despite the controversy, he remained committed to his causes. He continued advocating for mental health awareness, launching The Me You Can't See, a documentary series on emotional well-being. In the series, Harry opened up about his own struggles, discussing how therapy had helped him process the trauma of losing his mother. It was a side of him the world had never seen before, raw, vulnerable, and deeply human. He admitted that for much of his life, he had been afraid to seek help, believing that royals were expected to suffer in silence. But breaking free from those expectations had changed everything. Stepping away from the monarchy, however, had come at a cost. His relationship with his family, especially with Prince William, had become increasingly strained. Once inseparable, the two brothers were now distant. The media fueled speculation of a deep rift, portraying William as the loyal heir and Harry as the rebellious outsider. While Harry admitted in interviews that there was tension, he always emphasized that he still loved his family. But the hurt was real. He had expected more support from them during his struggles, and when it didn't come, he knew he had to step away. In 2022, another milestone arrived, the birth of their daughter, Lilibet Diana, named in honor of both Queen Elizabeth and Princess Diana. The choice of name was significant. Despite everything that had happened, Harry still held deep respect for his grandmother. But it also signified something deeper, his desire to carry on his mother's legacy, to ensure that her name and the values she stood for were never forgotten. The following year, in 2023, Harry released Spare, his long-awaited memoir. The title alone was a powerful statement. The heir and the spare had been a phrase used to describe Harry since birth, defining his role in the monarchy as secondary to William's. The book was his chance to tell his story in his own words, without media distortion or royal censorship. It was brutally honest, revealing details about his childhood, his struggles with grief, and his disillusionment with royal life. He spoke of feeling like an outsider within his own family, of his painful military experiences, and of the deep love he had for Meghan and their children. The memoir became an instant bestseller, but it also reignited tensions with his family. Some saw it as a final break from the monarchy, a closing chapter in his royal life. Others viewed it as a necessary reckoning, a chance for the world to understand what it truly meant to be a prince without a place. Through it all, Harry had proven one thing: he was no longer the boy who had walked silently behind his mother's coffin, no longer the wild prince making headlines for his reckless behavior. He was a man who had made the hardest choice of all, to walk away from the only life he had ever known in order to protect the family he had built. But his journey is far from over. With each new project, each public appearance, and each step he takes outside the shadow of the monarchy, Harry continues to redefine what it means to be a royal in the modern world. And whether one sees him as a hero or a rebel, one thing is undeniable: he has never stopped fighting for the life he believes in. Prince Harry's journey has been one of transformation, struggle, and self-discovery. From the moment he was born, his path seemed predetermined. He would always stand in the shadow of the future king, bound by duty, tradition, and expectations that left little room for individuality. But Harry was never one to simply accept the role assigned to him. His life has been defined by choices, some rebellious, some painful, but all leading him toward the man he was meant to become. Losing his mother at such a young age forced him to grow up faster than most. The trauma of that loss shaped every aspect of his life, from his struggles with mental health to his deep mistrust of the media. For years, he battled against the constraints of royal life, acting out in ways that both entertained and scandalized the public. But beneath the headlines and controversies was a young man searching for something real, something meaningful. The military gave him that purpose. It was the one place where his title didn't define him, where he was judged by his actions rather than his name. It gave him discipline, brotherhood, and the chance to serve something greater than himself. And yet, even after proving himself on the battlefield, he was still expected to return to a life that never truly felt like his own. Meeting Meghan Markle changed everything. She wasn't just the woman he fell in love with, she was the catalyst for the biggest decision of his life. Their relationship forced him to confront the reality of his situation. The monarchy, the press, and the expectations placed upon them were suffocating. He saw the same toxic patterns that had destroyed his mother's happiness now threatening his own family. And so, for the first time, he did something no modern royal had done before: he walked away. But stepping away did not mean escaping. The media followed them across continents, analyzing every word, every decision, every perceived misstep. Critics accused them of seeking attention while claiming to want privacy. Others saw them as revolutionaries, redefining what it meant to be royal. Harry knew there was no winning in the eyes of those who had already judged him. So instead, he focused on what truly mattered: his family, his mental health, and the causes he believed in. The release of Spare in 2023 was not just a memoir, it was a declaration of independence. For too long, others had told his story: tabloids, royal insiders, historians. Now, he was reclaiming it. The book was raw and deeply personal, detailing his struggles with grief, his difficult relationship with his father and brother, and the pain of being born into a system where he often felt like an afterthought. It shocked the world, divided public opinion, and strained family ties even further. But for Harry, it was necessary. If the world was going to talk about him, they should at least hear the truth from his own mouth. Through it all, Harry never lost sight of his ultimate goal: to create a life of purpose, meaning, and love. He had walked away from the only world he had ever known, not because he rejected it, but because he wanted something more. He had learned the hard way that being a prince did not guarantee happiness. What mattered was being true to himself, to his values, and to the family he had built. His journey is far from over. He continues to advocate for mental health, veterans, and humanitarian causes. He is still navigating life outside the institution that shaped him, learning what it means to be both royal and ordinary at the same time. And perhaps, that is his greatest legacy: not as the heir, not as the spare, but as a man who dared to forge his own path. If this story inspired you, like this video, comment below, and subscribe for more incredible stories that will help you improve your English. Do you want to improve your English 20x faster? Whether it's grammar, conversation, or fluency, we have the perfect material for you. Click the link in the description or the first pinned comment and take your English to the next level.